Family gatherings in our house were never quiet. There was always noise, laughter, too many voices in one room, plates clinking, chairs scraping across the floor. Someone always arguing about something small while my mother tried to keep everything from turning chaotic. But that afternoon felt different. My parents had been preparing for days. The living room had been cleaned twice. The dining table was extended to its full length. Extra chairs had been borrowed from neighbors. Even my father, who normally hated hosting anything, had been walking around the house checking every detail. "Make sure everything looks perfect," my mother kept saying. I didn't ask why. In our family, asking too many questions usually meant being told to mind your own business. My name is Lila, and if there was one thing everyone in my family agreed on, it was this. My older sister Marina was the star. She had always been the one people noticed first. Confident,
Loud.
beautiful in the way that made people turn their heads when she walked into a room. Growing up, every achievement she had was treated like a major event. When she passed her exams, we celebrated. When she got her first job, there was a dinner. When she bought her first car, my parents invited half the family to see it. Meanwhile, my accomplishments were quieter. Good grades were expected. Helping around the house was normal. Success was treated less like something special and more like something I was supposed to do. I learned not to complain. It made life easier. That afternoon, while everyone was busy setting up the house, I stayed mostly in the kitchen helping my mother arrange the food. Marina walked in wearing a bright red dress that looked like it had been chosen specifically to attract attention. "Wow," she said, looking around the room. "You'd think we were hosting a celebrity." My mother smiled nervously. "Just make sure you're polite when everyone arrives."
Marina laughed.
I'm always polite. I almost dropped the tray I was holding, because anyone who knew my sister knew that sentence wasn't exactly accurate. Guests began arriving around 5.
Aunts.
Uncles, cousins, family friends. The house quickly filled with voices and movement. People hugged. Conversations started. Someone turned on music in the background. I stayed near the kitchen doorway watching everything quietly. That's usually where I felt most comfortable. Then Marina spotted me. She walked over with 2 of our cousins beside her. "Well, look who decided to come out of hiding," she said loudly. Several people nearby turned their heads. "I wasn't hiding," I replied calmly. She tilted her head slightly. "Oh, really? Because you've been standing by the kitchen all evening like one of the waiters." A few cousins chuckled. I kept my voice steady.
"I'm helping Mom."
Marina smiled in that way that always meant trouble. "Of course you are." She turned toward the group of relatives standing nearby. "You know, Lila has always been the responsible one," she announced. "That's why she's perfect for the boring jobs." More laughter. It wasn't cruel laughter exactly, just the kind that happens when people assume everyone is joking. But Marina wasn't finished. She picked up a glass from the table and leaned casually against the chair beside me. "Actually," she continued, "Lila has a real talent." "Oh," one of my uncles said. "What kind of talent?" Marina gestured toward me dramatically. "She's amazing at making herself invisible." A few people laughed again. My mother glanced at us from across the room, but didn't say anything. I felt the familiar sensation in my chest, that quiet tightening I had known since childhood. Marina looked directly at me. "You've always been like that," she added. "So quiet, so serious." Then she turned back to the room. Honestly, if she disappeared for a week, half the family probably wouldn't even notice. That comment drew louder laughter. Even a couple of relatives who had just arrived smiled awkwardly. I stood there calmly, hands resting lightly on the edge of the table. Because moments like this weren't new. Marina had always enjoyed being the center of attention. And sometimes the easiest way for her to get attention was by turning me into the punchline. She raised her glass slightly. "To my quiet little sister," she said. "Proof that every family needs at least one boring person." More laughter filled the room. I simply looked at her, not angry, not embarrassed, just watching. Because there was something my sister didn't know. Something no one in that room knew yet. And judging by the way my father kept checking his watch, the moment they found out was getting closer. The laughter slowly faded as people returned to their conversations. Music played softly in the background while glasses clinked and chairs moved across the floor. From the outside, the evening looked like any other family gathering. But inside me, something had gone completely still. Marina stood near the center of the room, surrounded by cousins and a few relatives who always seemed to orbit around her like she was the main attraction. She thrived on attention. The louder the room became, the brighter she seemed to shine. Meanwhile, I quietly stepped back toward the edge of the room again, not because I felt small, but because I had learned something important over the years. When people are certain they're the center of attention, they rarely notice what's happening around them. My father walked past me carrying a tray of drinks. For a second, his eyes met mine. There was something different in his expression tonight, a kind of quiet anticipation. He checked his watch again, then glanced toward the front door. Someone important was clearly expected. Across the room, Marina's voice rose again. "You should have seen her in high school," she was telling a group of relatives. "She spent more time in the library than anywhere else." "Well, that's not a bad thing," one aunt said kindly.
Marina laughed.
"Oh, it's not bad. Just predictable." A cousin leaned forward. "So, what does Lila do now?" Marina waved her hand dismissively. "Same thing she's always done." "What's that?" "Studying."
Working.
"Being serious." She smirked slightly. "She's basically the human version of a spreadsheet." A few people chuckled again. My mother looked uncomfortable but stayed quiet. My father continued pacing slowly near the front hallway, still checking his watch, still glancing at the door. Marina noticed the movement. "Why does Dad look like he's waiting for a celebrity?" she asked loudly. The room quieted slightly. Even I turned my head toward my father. He smiled faintly. "You'll see soon." Marina raised an eyebrow. "Is someone important coming?" "You could say that." "Well, now I'm curious," she said. Several relatives nodded in agreement. "Come on, tell us," someone said. My father shook his head. "No spoilers." The room buzzed with curiosity. Conversations shifted toward guessing who the guest might be. A famous family friend? A business partner? Someone important from the community? No one seemed to know, except my father.
And me.
About 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The entire room went quiet. My father walked calmly toward the door. Everyone watched. Even Marina stopped talking. The door opened. 2 people stepped inside. A tall man in a dark suit and a woman carrying a folder. They looked slightly out of place among the casual family gathering. My father greeted them warmly. "Thank you for coming." The man smiled politely. "Of course. We wouldn't miss it." Marina whispered to one of our cousins.
Who are they?
The cousin shrugged. My father led the 2 guests into the living room. Then he clapped his hands once to get everyone's attention. "Everyone, if I could have a moment, please." The conversation slowly faded. People turned toward him. Marina crossed her arms, still curious. "What's going on?" she asked. My father stood near the center of the room with the guests beside him. "Tonight isn't just a family gathering," he said. "It's actually a small celebration." Murmurs spread through the room. "A celebration for what?" someone asked. My father smiled. "For someone who has accomplished something very important." Marina's eyes lit up immediately. "Oh my God," she whispered dramatically. "Is this about me?" Several cousins laughed. My father didn't answer her directly. Instead, he turned toward the man in the suit. "Would you like to explain?" The man stepped forward. He opened the folder he was holding and looked around the room. "We're here on behalf of the National Academic Excellence Foundation," he said. The name caused a few confused whispers. "We recognize students across the country who demonstrate exceptional academic achievement, leadership, and community impact." People glanced at one another. Marina straightened slightly, her smile growing wider. "I think I know where this is going," she said quietly to the cousin beside her. The man continued speaking. This year, one of the highest honors from our foundation is being awarded to a student from this family. The room grew even quieter. My father looked toward the crowd. Then he said the words that changed the entire atmosphere. We wanted to gather everyone here before announcing it. Marina's grin widened. She flipped her hair back confidently. I remained standing quietly near the side of the room, watching, waiting, because in a few seconds, everyone in that house was about to hear the name of the guest of honor. And my sister had absolutely no idea it wasn't hers. The room had gone completely quiet. Everyone's attention was on the man from the foundation as he held the folder in his hands. Marina stood near the center of the room with a confident smile already forming on her face. She glanced around at the relatives like someone waiting for applause to start. A few cousins were already whispering, "I bet it's her. She always wins these kinds of things." My father stood calmly beside the guest, his expression steady. The man cleared his throat slightly and continued. This award recognizes a student who not only achieved outstanding academic results, but also demonstrated dedication, discipline, and leadership within their community. He looked down at the paper for a moment, then back up. Marina leaned forward slightly, excitement clearly visible. My mother clasped her hands together nervously. The entire room waited, and this year, the man said clearly, the recipient of the National Academic Excellence Award is. For a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Lila Reynolds. Silence. Absolute silence. The name hung in the air like something unexpected. Marina's smile froze. A few relatives blinked in confusion, then heads slowly turned. Toward me. I was still standing near the edge of the room, exactly where I had been the entire evening. The man smiled politely. Lila. My father gestured toward me. Come here. For a second, no one moved. Then I stepped forward. The crowd parted slightly as I walked toward the center of the room. Marina stared at me like she had misheard something. Wait, she said. What? The man from the foundation shook my hand. Congratulations, he said warmly. This award is given to only a few students each year across the country. He opened the folder and handed me a certificate. Your academic record, leadership activities, and community service placed you at the very top of this year's selection. Several relatives gasped quietly. One aunt whispered, "Across the country?" Another cousin murmured, "That's incredible." Marina looked between me, the certificate, and the guest. Her confident expression had completely disappeared. Hold on, she said slowly. You're saying she's the one being honored? The man nodded politely. Yes.
Marina laughed awkwardly.
But she didn't tell anyone. I looked at her calmly. I didn't know they were announcing it tonight. My father finally spoke again. I found out earlier this week, he said, and I thought the whole family should hear the news together. The room suddenly filled with new voices. Relatives stepped closer. Lila, that's amazing. We had no idea. You must have worked incredibly hard. My mother looked both shocked and proud at the same time. Marina, however, stood completely still. Her earlier words still lingered in the room. She's the human version of a spreadsheet. She makes herself invisible. Half the family would notice if she disappeared. The contrast between those comments and the moment happening now was impossible to ignore. The man from the foundation continued. This award also includes a full academic scholarship and leadership grant for university. More murmurs spread through the crowd. Full scholarship? That's huge.
My father looked directly at me.
I'm proud of you, he said quietly. Those 4 words meant more than he probably realized. Meanwhile, Marina slowly lowered the glass she had been holding. Her earlier confidence had completely faded. The attention in the room had shifted, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't focused on her. I held the certificate carefully while relatives congratulated me, but I couldn't help noticing something. Marina avoided my eyes. Not angry, not embarrassed exactly, just stunned. Because the quiet sister she had just mocked in front of everyone had turned out to be the reason the entire gathering existed. The guest of honor. Eventually, the conversations returned. Music started again. People filled their plates with food. But the energy in the room had changed. And Marina never made another joke that night. As the evening ended, I stepped outside for some fresh air. The sky was dark and calm above the house. For years I had stood quietly at the edge of family gatherings, watching, listening, never needing attention. And tonight had proven something important. Sometimes the loudest people in the room think they control the story. But the truth is, the real story often belongs to the person no one was paying attention to.